हरिओम। प्रातः स्मरामि हृदि संस्फुरदात्मतत्त्वम् सच्चित् सुखं परमहंसगतिं तुरीयम् यत्स्वप्नजागरसुषुप्तिमवैति नित्यम् तद्ब्रह्म निष्कलमहं न च भूतसङ्गः तपोभिक्षीणपापानां शान्तानां वीतरागिणाम् मुमुक्षूणामपेक्षोऽयम् आत्मबोधो विधीयते बोधोऽन्यसाधनेभ्यो हि साक्षान्मोक्षैकसाधनम् पाकस्य वह्निवज्ञानम् विना मोक्षो न सेध्यति। वेलकम बैक टू जेम्स ऑफ भगवद गीता। सॉरी, टेक्निकल इशू आ गई थी। विल कंटिन्यू फ्रॉम वेयर वी लेफ्ट ऑफ। हम 14वें अध्याय में हम चर्चा कर रहे थे 3 गुणों के बारे में। The 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita talks about the 3 gunas, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. And हमने लास्ट श्लोक जो कंप्लीट किया था उसमें गुणों की आसक्ति के बारे में हम चर्चा कर रहे थे। आप जिस गुण में हो, आप में जो गुण सबसे ज्यादा प्रभावित है, उससे क्या परिणाम होता है, उसका क्या रिजल्ट होता है। सो ही सेड इन वर्स नंबर 17, जो हमने लास्ट में थोड़ा रिकैप कर लेता हूं जस्ट सो दैट वी आर ऑन द सेम पेज। शायद कुछ लोगों को याद नहीं होगा हम क्या चर्चा कर रहे थे। He said in verse number 17 of chapter 14, he said, from Sattva arises knowledge, from Rajas arises greed, and from Tamas arises heedlessness and delusion, and also ignorance. अगर आप सत्व में हो, अगर आप में सबसे ज्यादा प्रभाव सत्व का हो, if you have maximum proportion of sattva in you, so what will result out of knowledge, what will result out of sattva is knowledge. You'll be on the path of growth, you will be on the path of evolution. If you have the predominance of rajas in you, तो आप में लोभ पैदा होगी, greed पैदा होगी, that thirst. Rajas is the very source of the thirst. थोड़ा और, बस थोड़ा और, that sense by which you are never satisfied. जितना भी मिल जाए आपको, जितना भी मिल जाए आपको, अगर आप में वो थोड़ी और की इच्छा जागृत होती है, मतलब आप में रजस है सबसे ज्यादा मात्रा में. And similarly, if you are predominantly in tamas, from tamas, as a result of tamas, will arise heedlessness, moha, delusion, and also ignorance. You will be a victim of all of these 3. A tamasic person is charting his own destruction. That's what he is saying. So it's a loop. आप अपने आप में सत्व बढ़ाते हो ज्ञान के द्वारा, through knowledge, and what will result is you will be further on the growth path, on the path of gaining knowledge. अगर आप तमस को बढ़ाते हो, बढ़ावा देते हो, it's like a feedback loop. So these gunas feed each other. They feed themselves essentially. What you promote in yourself, these gunas will further help you grow in that direction. So it's your responsibility. It's your responsibility to first of all identify, which is why it is very important that you learn the distinction between these 3 gunas. It's very important. हम इस समय इतनी चर्चा क्यों कर रहे हैं इसके ऊपर, हम इतनी डिटेल में क्यों जा रहे हैं? Because it's very important that you understand what is sattva, what is rajas, what is tamas. And if I must confess one thing, English में कहावत है, the beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. The beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. अगर आप सत्व को देख पा रहे हो, अगर आप किसी चीज को देख पा रहे हो, किसी ब्यूटीफुल चीज को देख पा रहे हो, किसी चीज का आप किसी चीज को अप्रिशिएट कर पा रहे हो, वो अप्रिशिएशन की क्षमता आप में है, क्योंकि वो गुण आप में है. दैट्स इट, दैट्स व्हाट इट्स सेइंग. आप सत्व को देख पा रहे हो बिकॉज सत्व आप में है. अगर आप में सत्व नहीं है तो आप सत्व को देख नहीं पाओगे, समझ नहीं पाओगे. You will not be able to appreciate sattva if you are not sattvic, which is why the best of people are not appreciated in their lifetime. The best of people are not appreciated in their lifetime because the people around them are not necessarily sattvic. In your family, you could have the best of people with the best of virtues. You will not realize it. You'll not even realize it because you are not sattvic. So you have to be sattvic to realize sattva. Beauty lies in the eyes of a beholder. It takes a Milton to recognize a Milton. It takes a Tendulkar to recognize a Tendulkar. It takes a sattvic person to recognize sattva. So unless and until you grow yourself, you will not be able to grow and appreciate. In fact, most people don't even have the ability to conceive what is sattva. No, most people don't even value what is sattva. अगर आप एक सात्विक इंसान के गुणों के बारे में आप डिस्क्राइब करोगे तो most people will say, what a boring person. What a boring person. Most people will appreciate rajas. Most people will appreciate rajas because that is what they predominantly are. Or they will defend tamas because that is what they are. To be able to appreciate, not even appreciate, even recognize sattva requires you to be sattvic. So beauty lies. So that's a little caveat. आपको खुद grow करना पड़ेगा. Then only you will gain the ability to recognize this in further detail. Which is why studying this is important. Which is why इसके ऊपर मनन is important. It gives you a glimmer, an idea. I don't quite know. I don't quite understand what that is, but it gives me a direction of where to grow. So Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Those who are in Sattva, they grow. Those who are in Rajas, they remain mediocre. They remain in the world. They might be achieving a lot of things. They might be getting a lot of success. They might be getting a lot of name, fame. But there is something that is always missing in their life. They remain dissatisfied. And those who are tamasic, they are courting their own destruction. That is verse number 18. Verse number 18, which we will take up to start with. We'll start our study today by taking up chapter 14, verse number 18. The three gunas and what they result in. Urdhvam gachanti sattvasthaha madhye tishtanti rajasaha jaganya guna vrittisthaha adhe gachanti tamasaha urdhvam gachanti sattvasthaha madhye tishtanti rajasaha jaganya guna vrittisthaha adhe gachanti tamasaha. सत्व में उच्च स्थिति को पाता है, रजस में मध्यम में रहता है तथा निम्न गुणों में स्थित तामसिक पुरुष अधम नीच स्थिति को प्राप्त होता है. Those established in sattva move upwards, the rajasic remain in the middle, and the tamasic, following the course of the lowest guna, go downwards. Cultivating sattva in yourself, cultivating these virtues in yourself is the path of evolution. If you remain in rajas, if you are predominantly rajasic, you will remain dissatisfied. You will remain lost. You will acquire and enjoy a lot of things, but you will not find direction and fulfillment and meaning in life. Whereas if you are tamasic, God help you. Even God can't help you. If you are tamasic, you are destined to destroy yourself. This is not a shrap nahi hai. I'm not giving a shrap. This is not a curse. This is a fact. No guru has anything against anyone. भगवान कृष्ण कई बार गीता जी में कहते हैं इनको ऐसे होगा, इनका ऐसे होगा. He is not giving a curse. He has nothing against anyone. He is just stating a fact. अगर आप you become a victim of tamas, that's it. People are victim of their own tamas. Either they learn by the knocks and shocks of life. See, as I said earlier, it takes a Milton to recognize a Milton. You have to be sattvic to recognize sattva. And very often it's very difficult to recognize just by itself. If you are not sufficiently evolved, which is why they say revelation or evolution is a grace of the Lord. हे भगवान, आपने मुझे ये आंखें दी जिसके द्वारा मैं सत्व को जान सकूं, देख सकूं, मुझे सही मार्ग दिखे. That itself is a gift. It's a gift of your past effort, no doubt, but it's a gift nonetheless. Most people are not able to recognize the value of sattva. Most people, it's like आप बच्चे को जितना भी समझा दो, either the child has a capacity to understand, or they will only falter and understand. This is the way of life. If someone falters and understands, still there is hope for them. You feel happy, you feel grateful. ठीक है. But if someone doesn't understand even after falling, if someone doesn't lift themselves up even after facing the knocks and shocks of life, if someone repeats their mistakes over and over again, that is tamas. No capacity to grow. You're on the course downwards. And you are convinced, you're absolutely convinced that what you are doing, what you are thinking, how you are feeling is right. It's very painful. And it's very painful to be around tamasic people. And it's very painful to be, if you are attached to a tamasic person, it'll be very painful for you to see them hurt themselves, to see them go through a lot of suffering. So those established in sattva move upwards. Those in rajas remain stagnant in the middle, and those in tamas are spiraling downwards. So now Arjuna asks a very important question. Now you see, you get to see Arjuna's growth as a student throughout the Bhagavad Gita. पहले वो जैसे क्वेश्चंस पूछ रहा था, एंड अब वो जैसे क्वेश्चंस पूछ रहा है. These are questions which you and I also want to ask. आप में भी एक क्वेश्चन आया होगा कि आप, उत्सव जी, आप गुणों के बारे में बात कर रहे हो, और you're talking about, crossing over these gunas, you're talking about evolution, but who is one who has crossed over those gunas, and how does he get there? वो वहां पहुंचते कैसे हैं? Please मुझे समझाइए. This is a question which you must have also had, which I also definitely had, which Arjuna has. So you can see Arjuna's growth as a student even throughout the text. So this is a question which Bhagwan will answer in the next couple of verses. So we'll quickly chant the question before taking up the answer. Verse number 21. Who is a gunatit? Gunatit kaun hai? Verse number 21 of chapter 14. Arjuna uvacha कैलिंगै स्त्रीन् गुणानेतान् अतीतो भवति प्रभो किमाचारः कथं चैतान् स्त्रीन् गुणानतिवर्तते. अर्जुन उवाच कैर्लिङ्गै स्त्रीन् गुणानेतान् अतीतो भवति प्रभो केमाचारः कथं चैतान् स्त्रीन् गुणानतिवर्तते. अर्जुन बोले, हे प्रभु, इन तीनों गुणों से पार हुआ किन लक्षणों वाला और कैसे आचरण वाला होता है? वह कैसे इन तीनों गुणों से पार होता है? अर्जुन said, what are the marks? What marks has he who has crossed over these three gunas, qualities, O Lord? What is his conduct, and how does he go beyond these gunas? Very important questions. First of all, please describe to me what is the conduct of such a person. How do I recognize such a person? I will recognize a person as an outsider. I am not able to look into the mind of a person. How do I recognize? I only recognize by the outer conduct. I only recognize by what I can see, what I can perceive. So please help me in finding such people, because from their example, I will learn what is the conduct of such a person. How does such a person deal with life, deal with situations, and how does he even get to this state of evolution? इस स्थिति तक पहुंचते कैसे हैं? इस गुणातीत स्थिति तक पहुंचते कैसे हैं? क्या कर दिया इन्होंने जिसके द्वारा यहां तक ये पहुंच पाए हैं? How does he go beyond these three gunas? How does he cross over these three gunas? Arjuna's question. See, we are all, ये जो सब्जेक्ट है गुणातीत, ये जो टॉपिक है गुणातीत के बारे में, we are all a combination of the three gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas, and we are helplessly expressing our nature. Our nature, our vasanas are a composition of these three gunas in different proportions. किसी में 30% tamas, 30% rajas, 40% sattva होगा. किसी में 60% tamas, 20% rajas, 20% sattva होगा. Because you have different gunas than me, you are different from me. What accounts for the heterogeneous variety of human beings, what accounts for the different types and qualities of human beings, the different natures of human beings, is the gunas. So you are essentially an expression of your gunas. You, however you describe yourself, whatever qualities you ascribe to yourself, however you identify with yourself, it has to do with your gunas. बात यह है कि ये गुणातीत शब्द जो है, it's not a light word. To go beyond the gunas is not a casual thing. It's the ultimate achievement of man. To become independent of gunas, to go beyond the influence of gunas is the highest achievement. Right now, you and I are completely victims of our gunas. We are helpless expressions of our gunas. So to go beyond them is no mean feat. To become a gunatita. So self-realized person is called a gunatita. One who has transcended, gone beyond, crossed over the influence of these three gunas. What are the marks of such a person? As we discussed earlier, to get to this state, how do we get to this state? You cannot go from being completely enmeshed in gunas to become gunatita. It's not a springboard. Yes, hota nahi hai. The path of spiritual evolution is whatever your composition is today, आप में जितना सत्व रजस तमस है अभी आज, आप अपने तमस को रजस में कन्वर्ट करो, रजस को सत्व में कन्वर्ट करो. These are the ladders of growth. Wherever there is tamas in you, you must cultivate, try to eradicate that tamas. How? By injecting rajas. And how do you, and then identify rajas in you. The qualities of rajas have been discussed. Again, it's not that one discussion ke saath you'll be able to do it perfectly. No, you have to, this is the point of study, to identify rajas, to identify the qualities of rajas, and through knowledge, through regulation, eradicate rajas. What will emerge is sattva. And when you are sattvic, remember, sattva leads to knowledge. Sattva is the stepping stone. Sattva is the catalyst for ultimate spiritual growth. Sattva is that guna by which you become gunatita. This is a very important point to understand. The more sattvic you are, the more capable you are of going beyond the gunas, including sattva. The best example to explain this is the pole vault. कई लोगों ने सुना होगा ये example, but there's no better example. What is sattva? What is the role of sattva in your spiritual evolution? What is the role of this guna? Sattva is like, अगर आप pole vaulting कर रहे हो और आई डोंट, यू नो पोल वॉल्टिंग, आई होप यू नो पोल वॉल्टिंग. मैं समझा देता हूँ. पोल वॉल्टिंग एक एथलेटिक्स में एक स्पोर्ट है, ओलंपिक्स में खेला जाता है, कई एथलेटिक्स मीट्स में खेला जाता है, जहां पे एक एथलीट को एक ऊंचे से पोल को क्रॉस करना पड़ता है. दैट पोल इज मे बी सम 20-30, आई डोंट नो एग्जैक्ट हाइट, मैंने सब्जेक्ट पढ़ी नहीं है, 20-30-40 फीट, आई डोंट नो. एंड जो खिलाड़ी हैं वो और भी ऊंचे ऊंचे पोल से क्रॉस करने की कोशिश करते हैं, और जो सबसे ऊंचे पोल से क्रॉस कर पाए वो जीतता है. दैट्स द पर्सन हु विंस द कंपटीशन. एंड उतने ऊंचे पोल से वो क्रॉस कैसे करते हैं? वो पोल शायद 30-40 फीट की ऊंचाई पर है. नोबडी कैन जंप दैट हाई. So what they do, they use a long pole. It's like a long stick. They use that long pole and they dig that pole into the ground and they use that pole to climb. तो वो भाग भाग के आते हैं हाथ में पोल लिए, और फिर वो उस पोल को गाड़ते हैं, और उस मोमेंटम के द्वारा वो पोल उन्हें उठाती है और उस हाइट तक उठाती है, और उस पोल के उस पार वो छलांग लगा पाते हैं. दैट्स द वे अ पोल वॉल्ट वर्क्स. नाउ दैट पोल इज ऑल इंपॉर्टेंट. दैट पोल दैट अ पोल वॉल्ट यूजेस, वो जो डंडा है, वो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट है पोल वॉल्टिंग का. उस पोल के द्वारा, थ्रू विद दैट पोल, the athlete is able to climb to that height. Otherwise, it will be impossible to climb to that height. Just as, now here's a comparison. Right now, we are a lot of tamas, a lot of rajas. With this tamas and rajas, it is impossible to rise to the heights of spiritual evolution. We need sattva. The pole is like sattva. As you increase the proportion of sattva in you, it's like the pole that lifts you. And ultimately, what happens? When the athlete reaches that height near the bar which he has to cross, he leaves the pole behind and jumps over. वो पोल के साथ जंप नहीं कर सकते. वो पोल के साथ जंप करेंगे तो बैरियर टूट जाएगी और वो हार जाएंगे. अगर उन्हें छलांग लगाना है तो उन्हें पोल को छोड़ना पड़ेगा. Similarly, a gunatīta is one who leaves sattva behind as well, who goes beyond sattva as well. Sattva, the catalyst, the growth. सत्व के द्वारा उन्होंने ग्रो किया. सत्व के द्वारा उन्हें यहां तक पहुंचने का अवसर मिला. They got the chance to reach this state of evolution through sattva, and ultimately they have to leave sattva behind. So what is the role of sattva in your spiritual evolution? Sattva is like the pole in a pole vault. A spiritual student, a sadhak, is like the pole vaulter. He has to use sattva to grow. And ultimately, to become gunatita, he has to leave sattva behind as well. सत्वा में भी आ सकती है. यही तो हम चर्चा कर रहे हैं इस चैप्टर में. इस चैप्टर की शुरुआत में हमने चर्चा की थी. सत्वा में भी अटैचमेंट है. किससे अटैचमेंट है? ज्ञान से अटैचमेंट है, सुख से अटैचमेंट है. अगर आपको याद होगा, हमने चर्चा की थी उस प्रॉफिट के बारे में. आई हैड गिवन द एग्जांपल ऑफ द प्रॉफिट इन कलील गिब्रान. कलील गिब्रान लेखक हैं जिन्होंने प्रॉफिट नाम की एक किताब लिखी थी. And in the first portion of the prophet is essentially about the prophet, the Messiah, the Guru. The book is about the Guru, one who has reached, उन्हें मोक्ष प्राप्त हो चुकी है. And then comes the ultimate, the first chapter of this book describes a ship coming to take him away. Now, whether that's the ship of life, whether it's the ultimate death, Mahasamadhi. But because of his evolution, because of his state of high state, everybody in the village loved him. Everybody dependent on him. Everybody looked up to him. Everybody had grown so attached to him. His presence was see, anything good you grow attached to, it's very difficult to let go of. And the book describes the prophet himself feeling a little sad, a hint of sadness at the thought of leaving them behind, leaving the villagers behind, जिन्हें उन्होंने इतना प्यार दिया, इतना ज्ञान दिया. He definitely helped all of them. He had developed a love for them. He had developed a slight attachment. That is the attachment of Sattva, the attachment to happiness, true happiness, bliss, which is created through knowledge. But even that attachment he has to let go in his journey. So that's the beautiful attachment of Sattva. Ultimately, you have to let go of that. But don't worry about that. What I will suggest is, don't worry about attachment to Sattva. Right now, use Sattva to grow. Right now, we are all in the ground as pole vaulters. What do we have to do? We have to use the pole to rise up. When we rise up, then we'll decide what we have to do with the pole. Let us first rise up to that level. Let us first rise up to that level. It's like a pole vaulter discussing, okay, how will I let go of the pole? Will I be able to let go of the pole? It doesn't matter. The pole vaulter has to tell himself, okay, ultimately I have to let go. But right now, let me use it. Let me use this armor in my armory. Sattva is your best weapon in growth. So who is the person who has crossed over? What is the markers? What is the description of such a person? This is what he is going to describe. Who is a person who has crossed over the pole? Who is a person who has attained spiritual perfection, who has become gunatita? And how do I recognize such a person? Please tell me, O Bhagwan. And Bhagwan answers in verse number 22. Chapter 14, verse number 22. Who is a gunatita? Shri Bhagavan uvacha prakasham cha pravrittim cha mohameva cha pandava nadveshti sampravrittani nanivrittani kankshati. Shri Bhagavan uvacha prakasham cha pravrittim cha mohameva cha pandava nadveshti sampravrittani nanivrittani kankshati. श्री भगवान बोले, हे पांडव, प्रकाश, प्रवृत्ति और मोह के भी प्रकट होने पर गुणातीत मनुष्य न द्वेष करता है और पूरा न होने पर वह नहीं इनकी आकांक्षा करता है. श्री भगवान said, light, activity and even delusion, O Pandava, he hates not when present nor longs for them when absent. क्या कह रहे हैं भगवान? भगवान सीधा सीधा जवाब दो. आप क्यों ऐसे उल्टा जवाब दे रहे हो, कॉम्प्लिकेटेड जवाब दे रहे हो? प्लीज आप मुझे सीधा सीधा जवाब दो. अर्जुन ये सोच रहा होगा, which is why Bhagwan explains further. But we'll try to understand what he's saying out here at least. What is he trying to say in verse number 22? The blessed Lord said, Shri Bhagwan said, light, activity, and even delusion. Light represents Sattva, activity represents Rajas, delusion represents Tamas. Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. O Pandava, he hates not when present, nor he longs for them when absent. पहला डिस्क्रिप्शन गुणातीत व्यक्ति के बारे में is this: he has no preference for any guna. Light, Sattva, he doesn't hate it when it is present, nor does he long for it when it is absent. जब उनके चारों ओर रजसिक या तामसिक लोग हों, वो कंप्लेन नहीं करते. What is the meaning of light when it is absent? Light being absent means Sattva being absent. When there is lack of Sattva in your surrounding, in your environment, when people all around you are not Sattvic, a spiritually evolved person never complains about the environment. This is the biggest lesson from this verse. उनका environment जैसा भी हो, सात्विक हो, राजसिक हो, तामसिक हो, doesn't matter whether it is Sattva, Rajas or Tamas. Whatever is present, whatever is absent, neither he hates nor does he long for it. वो ना तो किसी भी environment से, किसी भी circumstance से द्वेष करते हैं और न ही किसी भी environment की आकांक्षा करते हैं. It doesn't long for, it doesn't crave for a certain kind of environment. A spiritually evolved person doesn't wait for the world to change. A spiritually evolved person doesn't wait for the world to change, isn't dependent on the condition of the world. As Mahatma Gandhi said, any fool can achieve shanti in shanti. Any fool can achieve shanti in shanti. If you're waiting for the world to become peaceful, for yourself to become peaceful, it doesn't say much about you. A spiritually evolved person is one who is able to maintain his inner condition despite the outer condition. A person is able to maintain Sattva despite there being Rajas or Tamas around him. A person is able to maintain his virtues despite there being a lot of vices around him. A person who is not influenced by the environment. That's all that is packed into this verse. Now, see, this is, you can't hold a sadhak to this. This is the description of a gunatita. This is the description of someone who is evolved, someone who is crossed over, someone who is gone beyond. See, the problem is people will read this verse and then say, Acha, agar mujhe spiritual banna hai, then I have to be sattvic in a rajasic environment. I have to be sattvic in a tamasic environment. I have to not care about the environment. What you have to appreciate today is that you are influenced by your environment. I am influenced by my environment. That's why we are not gunatita. You and I are not gunatita right now. At least I can say for myself. I don't know about you. Because we are influenced, affected by our environment, which is why we have to be very careful of the environment we are in. But slowly we have how do we measure our growth? We measure our growth by our slow removal of dependence on the environment outside. Maybe in the beginning you were 100% dependent. Like a child is 100% dependent on the environment. An animal is 100% dependent on the environment. A plant is 100% dependent on the environment. Plants will grow in a certain environment. Plants will die in a certain environment. They are helplessly victims of the environment. मेथी कब उगती है? मेथी अभी नहीं उगती. मेथी नवंबर दिसंबर में उगती है. The moment it is February, March, the moment the sun starts blazing hot, methi will not grow. Methi is completely dependent. आप सोच रहे हो कि मेथी का एग्जांपल क्यों दिया है इसने इन्होंने? Because I miss methi. I love methi. And now it is April, March, end of March. So we'll not get methi anymore. But that's the fact. Plants are a victim of the environment. Now humans have got a brain, that's why they have genetically modified plants, or they grow plants in a certain environment, controlled environment, in a greenhouse or whatever, or they grow somewhere very far where the weather is good and they transport it. So now you get, for example, mangoes. You get mangoes. Abhi March आ गया है. अभी रत्नागिरी से mangoes आ रहे हैं, because वहां थोड़ा गर्म रहता है. वहां March में ही mangoes start ripening. In fact, they might be artificially also ripening, a lot of them. So humans have gotten all these techniques. That's human intellect. That's not the plant. The human intellect के द्वारा हम इन factors को हम इनसे deal कर पा रहे हैं. But a plant itself is completely dependent on the environment. And जैसे environment बदला, a plant cannot even help itself. जब तक आप plant में पानी नहीं डालोगे, it cannot help itself. So a plant is completely dependent on the environment. If the environment changes, the plant suffers. Similarly with an animal is completely, to some extent, not to the extent of a plant. An animal is very, very dependent on the environment. That's why animals migrate. If the environment in a certain area changes, an animal doesn't have the capacity to change the environment. An animal, what will it do? It will migrate. It will go from cold climate to warm climate. And then when the warm becomes too hot, it will go back to cold climate. That's the great migration. It happens. You should watch National Geographic. So plant is completely dependent on the environment. An animal is still very much dependent. It has no capacity to change the environment. Only a human being has a capacity to change, adapt, and even grow completely independent of the environment. A human being alone has the capacity to change the environment and completely grow independent of it also. Scientific buddhi is what will help you change the environment. Spiritual buddhi is what will help you grow independent of the environment. Scientific buddhi, gross intellect, sthul buddhi is what will help you change the environment, control the environment, modify the environment. Spiritual buddhi, subtle intellect, is what will help you remain unaffected, is what will help you remain insulated. So a gunatita, this is what he's trying to say in verse number 22. A gunatita, it doesn't matter whether there is sattva, rajas, or tamas outside. He is completely shielded within. Neither he hates nor he longs for. What is our condition? We wait on the world to change. We are dependent on the world to change. We are judgmental. We are judgmental about tamas or rajas. In fact, the more judgmental you are of tamas or rajas, the more tamas or rajasic you are. A sattvic person is not judgmental. A sattvic person is very empathetic. Very empathetic. So this is the first bouncer Bhagwan dete hain. Someone who is completely self-sufficient. A gunatita is one who is completely self-sufficient. The environment, the circumstance, the situation doesn't affect him. It doesn't affect him. And आगे क्या कहते हैं हम देखते हैं in verse number 23. He continues his description of a gunatita, of a spiritually evolved person. We'll study that in verse number 23. Udasinavadasinah gunaihyo na vichalyate guna vartanta ityevam yogavat yovatisthati nengate udasinavadasinah gunaiyo na vichalyate guna vartanta ityevam yovatisthati nengate. आगे भगवान कहते हैं जो उदासीनवत स्थित हुआ गुणों द्वारा विचलित नहीं होता तथा गुण गुणों में बरत रहे हैं ऐसा जानते हुए जो हमेशा स्थित रहता है वह चलायमान नहीं होता. So भगवान कहते हैं he who seated like one unconcerned, उदासीनवत, is not moved by gunas, गुणों से विचलित नहीं होता. Realizing, what does he realize? What is the knowledge he has? Realizing that only gunas function. गुणों में बरत रहे हैं. Only gunas function. Is firm and moves not. Such a person is firm and moves not. वह विचलित नहीं होता. So क्या समझा रहे हैं भगवान out here? He continues in his description. Whatever the situation outside, whatever the condition outside, whoever the person outside, whoever the second person is dealing with, what is the knowledge? What is that knowledge with which he is able to remain equanimous? What is the knowledge with which he is able to remain completely self-sufficient, remain independent? There's only one piece of knowledge. There's only one piece of knowledge. Guna guneshu vartante. गुणों में बरत रहे हैं. Only gunas function. This is perhaps the most important life lesson, whether you are on the spiritual path or on the material path. The most important life lesson. This is not just philosophy, this is even psychology. Even to succeed in the world, even to succeed in your family life, even to succeed in your business, you must understand guna guneshu vartante. It doesn't matter who the person is. Everybody is a helpless expression of their gunas, regardless or whether you like it or not. And people think, oh, this person is close to me, I will make them change. It's not possible. You cannot make anyone change. First of all, who are you to change them? Who has given you the right to change them? Who has given you the right to change them? You have no jurisdiction. Law mein shabd aati hai, jurisdiction. You have no jurisdiction over another person. How they are, who they are. At best, you can, if you want to suggest something, you can suggest it. You cannot force anyone to change, and you should not. But how they are, who they are, it is something you have to adjust to. Whatever change has to be brought about will have to be brought about by them. And if you want to bring about certain change in them, if you want to influence someone, the only way to influence someone is to be that yourself. The only way to influence someone is to lead by example. Let others see you, see your example. When they see you, when they see your example, when they will be impressed by it, when they will be inspired by it, they will follow it. They will follow it. That's the only way. What is forced is not forceful. What is shoved down another person will not have any impact on them. They have to come and take it from you. They have to come and take the knowledge from you. They have to come and learn from you. You will not be able to teach anyone anything. It's a fact. So it's a very important lesson. First of all, assessing another person's personality. Every individual, regardless of who they are, black or white, brown or yellow or whatever, whichever part of the world they come from, whatever race they are, whatever religion they follow, whatever height, weight, whatever gender they are, doesn't matter. Everybody is a helpless expression of their gunas. And you'll find all kinds of people in every environment. You must assess and learn to adapt to a certain person's nature, because nobody's nature will change overnight. This is what you have to understand. Nobody's nature will change overnight. It's an assessment you will have to make and something you will have to adhere to. People's outward behavior may change, but their nature won't change. There's a very important lesson after the Mahabharata, when I think it was with Yudhishthir or with Bhim, I'm not sure. I think it was with Bhim. Yes, Bhim ke saath ye hadsa hua tha. After the Mahabharata, Dhritarashtra jo hai, wo aaye the Pandavon se milne. I'll just end with this example today. He came to meet the Pandavas after the Mahabharata war, and the situation had changed, circumstances had changed, and outwardly Dhritarashtra was very happy for them. He had accepted that defeat of his sons, and he had reconciled that, and he had become outwardly very loving to the Pandavas. So he came to meet all the Pandavas. And ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा लोग सिर्फ बाहरी expression देखते हैं. So they were all very enamored. They were all very impressed. Oh my God, the king himself has come to see the Pandavas. Oh, what a changed person. He's able to put aside the grief for his children and greet his nephews. They thought very good things about him. But Bhagwan Krishna was very smart. So, agar aapko yaad hoga, it was Bhima who killed Duryodhan. It was Bhima who killed Duryodhan in battle. Not in battle, outside the main battlefield. And Dhritarashtra was very, very attached to Duryodhan. So when Dhritarashtra came to hug Bhim, instead of hugging Bhim, Bhagwan Krishna got a gold statue of Bhim. And Dhritarashtra was blind. He didn't see it. He just hugged whatever he hugged. And what happened next? Dhritarashtra, while hugging that golden statue, hugged it so hard. He squeezed it, pulverized it. It broke into pieces. That statue broke into pieces. That much of hurt and anger was there in Dhritarashtra. With that emotion, he broke that solid statue. Had it been Bhim, he would have broken Bhim also. He would have killed Bhim. That was his goal. That was the thought in his head. So guna guneshu vartante. There are a lot of other things to study about in that incident, but the thing we are trying to study is gunas do not change. Dhritarashtra, his attachment, his love and his attachment for his sons, it's not immediately overnight that emotion will completely change. He will not be able to get over his attachment just because of a change in circumstance. So the change in circumstances might change the outer behavior of people, but their inner nature remains the same. Very important lesson that we have to learn. So with that thought, we'll conclude today's class and we'll meet again. We'll continue this discussion and perhaps even conclude this chapter tomorrow. So we'll meet you again in the same place on Zoom at 7 a.m. Welcome back to this season, and hope to have a nice and long journey with you for the next 10 days. Hari Om Tat Sat. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.